I decided I should investigate why so many cruises are being bumped off cruises right now, after seeing in just one day it happening to so many, including Carnival bumping many passengers of several upcoming Carnival Conquest sailings, upset people in a Seabourn Facebook group reporting being bumped off one of 3 back-to-back cruises they had booked, and P&O Cruises cancelling and bumping thousands off a 35-night sailing to the Caribbean. Welcome aboard. I'm Gary Bembridge. In this, I'm exploring 7 reasons it's happening more these days, what you should watch out for, and how to protect yourself. Let's start with the biggest cause. Most people are being bumped off cruises because cruise lines are redeploying ships to regions with more demand, and by changing or dropping plans to home base a ship out of certain ports. Of course, over the last few years, many passengers were bumped off cruises due to the Israel-Middle East conflict, making it too dangerous for ships to use the Suez Canal. Ships used it to go to and from their Asia and Australian seasons and for world voyages. Lines had to cancel, reroute and redeploy ships to get around this limitation. I saw that firsthand on my Silver Sea Silver Spirit cruise around South Africa. The ship was due to sail after my trip to the Seychelles, through the Suez Canal and on to Dubai, but they had to redeploy the ship back to Europe via West Africa, and they bumped everybody booked on that original planned sailing off the cruise. Now, while most lines have factored in not using the Suez Canal, the main reason I'm seeing for redeployments these days is soaring demand for Caribbean cruises, especially by new-to-cruise passengers looking for short 3 to 5 day trips. Several cruise lines are cancelling and bumping people booked on cruises in regions like Asia, Australia, South America and Europe to move the ships to the Caribbean to meet this demand. For example, I saw that Norwegian Cruise Line cancelled and bumped people off 35 cruises on 4 of their most popular ships, Norwegian Bliss, Norwegian Breakaway, Norwegian Encore and Norwegian Joy, for the last quarter of this year to redeploy them on new based routes with more demand. That P&O Cruise cancellation I mentioned at the start was also due to them redeploying Ventura to sell new itineraries in Europe out of the UK because demand for them was greater there. I also saw Cunard launch their 2027 sailing program and abruptly pull it the next day. I can see now that they've relaunched it, that they've actually moved Queen Elizabeth from home basing in Miami and Seattle, sailing the Caribbean and Alaska, to in 2027 being home based in Europe to do fly Mediterranean cruises. The second reason I'm seeing people bumped off cruises due to kind of redeployment changes like this is when lines change cruise ship home port plans. For example, I saw that Princess is pulling Majestic Princess home base out of Galveston to run where it was due to run Caribbean cruises. So they've cancelled and bumped people off 15 cruises towards the end of this year because they're moving the ship to a busier home port. But there is a reason I had not seen before emerging this year, where lines are choosing to bump people off their cruises these days. This one is when a cruise line changes who can go on a particular cruise. I mentioned Carnival Conquest at the start, and in this case, Carnival changed 5 of its Caribbean sailings out of Miami with just 8 weeks notice into adult-only casino-focused sailings. Now, it's not clear if this is a test to see if they should introduce more adult-only sailings, but they bumped everyone on a booking that had someone under 21 on those particular sailings. As I mentioned, later I will discuss what the lines will offer, what to do and how to be prepared if you're ever bumped off a cruise. But before that, more on why cruise lines are bumping more people than ever off cruises that they already have booked. The next one is unfortunately becoming increasingly common, and it can happen at fairly short notice. This is when the ship has been chartered. Cruise lines find charters very appealing because it means guaranteed revenue and removes the hassle and costs of promoting a sailing, including, for example, paying commission to travel agents for booking up the sailing. I'm seeing 4 main charters happening right now. First of all, the ship is chartered to a company to run a corporate event, perhaps a sail event or a conference. Next, an interest group for charters for a hosted theme cruise like Atlantis, who run LGBT cruises, or perhaps a company that hosts something like a Star Trek theme cruise, and so on. Third reason is big events like major sports events where they host attendees or participants, or when Virgin Voyages was chartered to film the TV show The Bachelorette. And fourth, when a line charters a ship to another line, like Quark Expeditions is chartering Atlas Ocean Voyages World Voyager, chartering that ship to do 4 Antarctic seasons. If you Google cruises cancelled due to charter, you'll be shocked to see a really long list of cruise ships affected across all cruise lines, from resort lines like Carnival or Royal Caribbean through to ultra-luxury lines like Seabourn that I mentioned at the start. Unfortunately, charters can happen at relatively short notice, even less than 4 months before they happen. While charters can be announced at short notice, we do tend to have more notice for the next one, but it too is a growing reason I'm seeing people being bumped off cruises. This is when the ship is sold to a different cruise line. There's usually more notice given because lines don't tend to sell and transfer ships at very short notice. Now, I've spoken about this topic before in another video, but here briefly are some examples I've seen right now leading to people being bumped off future cruises. Regent Seven Seas Navigator and Oceania Insignia are both leaving their fleets to be converted into residential ships as part of a new company called Crescent Seas. Regatta is leaving Oceania fleet to go on a year-long world cruise under a charter to the Australian-based Flight Centre Group with the name My Cruises Explorations by Norwegian. Celebrity Expedition and Celebrity Exploration ships in the Galapagos have been sold. Norwegian Sky and Norwegian Sun are moving across to the Indian Cordelia line. Seabourn has sold Sojourn to the Japanese Mitsui Ocean Cruises, and Costa Fortuna is leaving to become part of Margaritaville at Sea. You can't even sail on P&O Cruises Australia at all because they've been rebranded into Carnival ships. For many, including me, ship sales can be a little bit upsetting because we often choose a ship because it's a favorite. For example, I really like Regent Navigator and I'm actually booked on a West African cruise, but luckily I haven't been bumped off because it's happening just before the ship leaves the fleet. The next reason I see people being bumped off a cruise ship is because of frequent changes to the date that ships are heading into dry docks. All cruise ships must go into dry docks every few years under maritime law to be able to check it over in detail, including all the kind of underwater areas. I've noticed that timings seem to be being chopped and changed frequently. This is due to limits on availability within the shipyards, availability of materials, or actually just sometimes it makes more sense in terms of timing for the cruise line. So as I was making this, I saw some examples. In fact, the very day I'm recording this, it was announced that Carnival Conquest's dry dock was being rescheduled, and they cancelled and bumped people off 5 scheduled cruises. The other problem I see with ships going into dry dock is they can be delayed coming out, leading to more cancellations and people being bumped off them. For example, recently there was a lot of press about P&O Cruises having to cancel with just a few days' notice cruises on P&O Aurora due to dry dock delays. I've also seen with great frequency people being bumped off cruises when new ships are running over schedule in the shipyard. The good news is fewer of these seem to be happening because shipyards are catching up after disruption from the pandemic shutdowns. But in recent years, many people were being bumped off maiden voyages, including Sun Princess, Queen Anne, P&O Avia, and Explorer 2. I always recommend avoid booking maiden voyages because so many people find they get bumped from them when the ships are late out of the shipyards. Another reason I'm seeing people being bumped off cruises is due to the ship being overbooked. I'm seeing more people posting about being contacted to be told that their particular cruise is overbooked and they're being offered incentives to change to a different cruise. I've seen that recently with Asmara, Seabourn, and even Princess Cruises. How does this happen? Well, cruise lines will overbook on the basis that history tells them a percentage of people will cancel or be no shows. So they will keep taking guaranteed fare bookings. These are fares where they guarantee you at least the grade that you've booked. However, if fewer people than usual cancel than normally expected, the ship is oversold and they need to find ways of bumping people off that sailing. This is really important. These days, demand for cruising is really high, particularly in some key areas like the Caribbean and Alaska, and ships on average are selling at about 110%. Now this is possible because ship capacity is measured based on the number of fixed berths. So people sharing cabins using sofa beds means ships can sail over capacity. But if you book a fare that allows you to choose a specific cabin, you're not going to get bumped, but you could get bumped off a cruise if you've booked a guaranteed fare. So if you have a guaranteed fare, I really recommend the minute you're able to check in for your cruise, because you want to be given an allocated cabin early in the system. Don't wait to check in till right up close to the cruise or even at the port. These days, cruise lines are becoming more proactive at contacting people in the run-up to the cruise to avoid some rather well-known issues. So for example, 14 months ago, people only found they were bumped off their cruise on arriving at the port on a Royal Caribbean Quantum of the Seas sailing out of Brisbane. What happened and what were they offered? Well, basically the same as everybody affected by any of the reasons for being bumped off a cruise. The cruise line will offer the chance to switch to a similar sailing if they have one. They offer you to get a full refund or to take a future cruise credit with some added incentive, usually around 10%, but it can be up to 25%. The problem is if you've planned related items like hotels and flights, not through the cruise line, they often don't offer any help or compensation. So having travel insurance when you book is absolutely key. Another problem I'm seeing is more people than ever are actually being denied boarding when they go to check in for their cruise, even when they think they're following cruise line advice. To find out more and what this is about, join me over in this video. See you over there.